Do, 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 do. Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Sun City in Arizona. Hope you've all had a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Net podcast number 1260. Getting up there. Tonight we have for you 5 tips for genealogy brick walls. So when you come up with a brick wall in genealogy, what are some ways that you can get around it? They're pretty straightforward steps, and sometimes they're not simple, but you can have a lot of fun with them anyway. So, number one on the list of 5 tips for genealogy brick walls is include sources for every piece of information that you have. If it was, great aunt Pat told me, blah, 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 put that in there for the source. You know, where did you get your information from? Did somebody tell you about it? Was it in an interview? Was it from a newspaper article? Was it from the actual certificates? Was it from a family Bible? Where did you get the pieces of information that you have from? And if you come across a piece of information, and so that's the first step, is make sure that everything has sources. And that's going to take me a long time to go through and do all that with my tree, but I will do a little bit each day. The problem is I end up going down a rabbit hole and the rabbit warren, and yeah, that's another story for another day. So look at the information you have. Where did you get the information from? Where did you get your birth information from? Where did you get the marriage information from? The death information? Even if it's personally experienced, like it's information like you were at the wedding, so you know when the wedding date was. Put that in there. Attended the wedding. If you are at the birth, or you got a text message to say that, you know, your grandchild had been born or whatever, put that in the source for that piece of information, that it came via a text message from the dad, you know, or I was present. Yeah, it's kind of a fun one with the mum. Well, I was there. You know, so look at the information that you have. Where did you get it from? It's as simple as that. It can be difficult. And that's step number 1. Step number 2 is, if you have no sources, it doesn't mean the information is wrong. Put in the source thing, unknown origin, or unknown information, or unknown source. It doesn't mean the information is wrong. It just means that you haven't been able to verify it yet. And that's okay, because some information could be wrong, or it could be 100% correct. You just haven't found it with the right search words or the right, keywords, or maybe it's not uploaded online yet. It could be in a physical copy in a resource place like an archives or a library, or the local registry, wherever everything is registered and all of that sort of stuff. So it could be the fact that you don't have a source for it yet because it may not be available online. It's got to be something you have to do in person. So think of things like that too. Number 3, do you have any lost relatives? Like when you're looking at your tree and you look at a particular family and go, well, they're only showing 3 kids. I know they had 4. I'm pretty sure they had 4. Is there a lost relative in there? Is there anybody in that family that you can call up and say, hey, how many siblings you got? It could be you haven't seen them for a while, spoken to them for a while or whatever. Just connect with them and go, can you remind me how many siblings you have again? Who am I missing? I know that you've got, you know, John and Tom, and, you know, was there anybody else? Yeah, you know, and it could be a girl one. So, yeah, I had 3 brothers. Well, who was the third brothers? Oh, that was Jimmy. So, you know, ask if there's lost relatives. Are they really lost? In some cases they are, because what you may recall or have been told may not be correct. You know, they might say, oh, well, they had 4 children and you've got 3 names, but it could be that they actually only had 3 names, 3 children. But it could also be that the reason you don't have any information on the 4th one, it could be a child that passed away, or an infant that passed away just not long after being born. So when you look at the lost relatives, look for death certificates. Make sure that you look for death certificates, look for cemetery records, those sorts of things, in case the 4th child or the missing child actually died near childbirth or at some point in their childhood. There are many families that I've gone through where they have had 10, 12, 13, 14 kids, but only 8 of them made it to adulthood. And when you look at the time that they were born and the era, time being the time period that they were born in and the history of that area, you know that there was a high infant mortality rate at that point. Some of them have found the reason why, others they haven't. So, look for those sorts of things. So the lost relatives may not even be lost. It could be that you think that there's 4 and there's actually only 3, so you haven't really lost anyone. You just made it up or thought you heard it from somewhere. So you write that down. Great Auntie Jessie told me that they had 4 children. I can only find records for 3. And talking with other family members, I discovered there was actually only 3. Can only find birth certificates for 3, can only find death certificates for 3, cannot find a 4th person, can't even find a 4th person on the census reports. So Auntie Jessie doesn't know what she's talking about. Sometimes age will play, and age will come into this. The age of the person that you are asking the questions for may come into this, and their memory may not be as sharp as it used to be. So make sure that you fully research the families. Look at those census reports. Look for birth, deaths, and marriages, especially newspaper articles as well will pronounce any birth, deaths, and marriages. Look for newspaper articles, not just on the society pages where they have the birth, deaths, marriages, engagements, that sort of thing. You want to look at newspaper articles as well, because maybe there was an accident and the child was killed during that accident, and it was actually written up as an article, but there was never an obituary issued for it. So look at that. I found one child the other day, which the family didn't know existed, and the only reason I found it was because I found their death certificate. It's kind of hard when you find those death certificates. And so we found the death certificate, and the parents' names were correct. And so then it was like, okay, we need to research this more to prove it, because death certificates are I'm trying to forget the name of it. The information on death certificates comes from a person that may not be a family member. It could be a good friend of the family. It could be one of the parents, and they may be a little distraught, so they may get some information mixed up. They're grieving. It could be another family member who's provided the information. So you have to look on the death certificate and see who is the informant, because it will tell you who the informant is and how they're related to the family. So do you rely on that information or not? But through the research, I was able to prove that they were part of the family, because I also found the infant on a census report. And it was one in New York. So I found it on that 5-year census report, which was awesome. Because they would not have been on the 0-year ones. They would not have been on the federal ones, which are every 10 years on the zeros. So what other reports what other records can you look at? Are there baptismal records? Are there birth certificates? So keep looking for this information. And there was another child I found that was, that lived for, it said, what was it? 1 day, 14 hours and 32 minutes. It actually had it written on the death certificate, which is why I remember it, because it was kind of weird that it had 1 day, 4 hours, and what did I say, 32 minutes, 33 minutes. They had the actual, right down to the minute of how this child was. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it wasn't even 2 years old and they lost it. So the baby may have been born with some deformity or something like that, and it was a little hard to decipher the handwriting. So working on getting the handwriting a little clearer so I can try and decipher it to see what the child died of. Premature. That one was premature. It was a premature baby. So prematurity, it had written on the thing. It was the other one I couldn't figure out. It was the one where the family didn't know there was another child that had died. They were like 4, I think, or 3. They were under the age of 5. But the one that was alive, not even 48 hours, that one died of prematurity, is what it had written on the death certificate. So it was obviously a preemie. But, there could be stuff like that, and you didn't know about it because the family doesn't talk about it. It's a sore point with some family members, so they don't talk about things like this. and some of them will be they may have been a stillborn birth, and it might just have, one of them had female baby. This was the one that was less than 48 hours old, just had female baby because they had never named it at that point. And I'm like, that's kind of sad that they had this baby, and even though it lived less than 48 hours, it didn't have a name. I'm like, why? Every baby deserves a name. Even if it's stillborn, it deserves a name. It deserves a name so that people can remember it. And I don't know. That's just me. So lost relatives, are they really lost? Are they there? You may find them. And the other cool part about looking for lost relatives too is it could provide a key to help you break through the brick wall. Sometimes we have to go. If you've followed me long enough, you know that I always tell you that even though you may be going straight up you may be going up the family tree just along the pedigree lines being parents to grandparents to great-grandparents, blah, 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 the direct lines. Sometimes you've got to go sideways to go up. And by going sideways into siblings and cousins, you can find more information that then gets you to the next level of the family tree on the direct line. Because you may be able to find more information on that person than you can on the direct person that you're going through. And that's happened many times. So are your lost relatives really lost? You just have to sorry, my mum's so excited. They just got my birthday / Christmas gifts just arrived, and I made them these really cool water bottles with their names on them. They're going to be going on a hike in a few weeks, and so I thought that'd be good for those. And so yeah, the message just flashed up. I'm sorry, I should have put my phone away. So sometimes you can find more information by finding out more information about siblings, their children, which may lead you up, which is why when you're doing DNA testing, you may have one person here that is related to this group of people here, and then their sibling is related to this group of people here. So you have that intersection, that bit where you've got the similar pieces in there, but these people, this one's related to cousins over here, and this one's related to cousins over here. And you think, well, shouldn't I be related? No. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. We'll do another DNA explanation on that. Maybe I'll see if I can get a genetic specialist to come on and talk about that, because it's kind of cool. I was actually telling somebody about this the other day, and they go, oh, I want to know more about this. So they really want to get into the genetics side of it. And I said, just remember, it's another tool. The DNA is another tool in your toolbox for being genealogist. So you have your genealogical graphs, your family tree laid out there. And so that shows you all of the births, deaths, marriages, how everybody is related. And the genetic DNA lays on top of that to show you who you share DNA with. So it's not because genetic DNA will show you are related, but not how you're related. So yes, just think about that one. Number 4. So that's number 1 is include sources for every piece of information. Where did you get that information from? Did somebody tell it to you? Did somebody write it in a letter to you, or an email, or a text message? Did they send you a photograph with the information on the back of it? Where did you get the information from? Did you find an actual certificate for it? Where did you find the certificate? Was it one that you actually have on hand? I have boxes of certificates, and when I get them all scanned and everything, I've then got to go through and attach them all to the right people in the tree, and I can put certificate was sourced by this person, because my mother-in-law did a lot of research in the 60s, 70s, and beginning of the 80s. And so she's got a lot of certificates, and I don't know where she got all her certificates from unless I find a document that says that some of them actually have letters with the certificates of the letter that she wrote to a particular organization asking them for a copy of the thing. So she has the correspondence together in some cases, not all of them, just in some, which is kind of cool, because then I can put there that, in the source information, I can put that she wrote the letter to this organization and they provided the certificate, and this is the details of the certificate. So number 1 is making sure you got sources for all your information. Number 2 is, if you don't have a source, doesn't mean it is wrong. Just put there in the source field that currently unable to find any source for this information. digging further. And the cool part about Ancestry is they have these little tags that you can use for people. So you can go in there, and I'm just going to go in there so I can get what the tags are, because they have some really cool tags in there that you can put on people when you're researching them. And it's a good way to, let me just go into this person's one here. So some of the tags that they have, tools, under tools, go to view notes. Okay, so under tags, you've got ones that you can customize, but then you've got DNA tags, like it's a common DNA ancestor, there's a DNA connection, we have a DNA match. The life experience tags is you can put there enslaved person, free person of color, immigrant, indentured servant, military service, royal nobility, slave owner. Relationship tags are like adopted into the family, adopted out of this family, died young, direct ancestor, multiple spouses, never married, no children, an orphan. And then under research tags, you can put actively researching, brick wall, so you can actually brick wall them. Put complete, like you have done everything you possibly can and found every piece of information that you possibly can, and you have exhausted your resources, and now you've got a lot of information about that person that you can feel confident about writing a story about them, so you can put them as complete. Then you have hypotheses. This is where you turn around and go, we think that this person is a child within this family. Here's the reasons why. Now we have to go prove it. Now we're going to prove it. And that's when you come up with your research question. Is this person related to this couple? And then you've got the unverified ones. Those are the ones that you have in your tree that you have not done any research on. You have not verified that they are a member of the family. And then you have verified, meaning that you've found the paperwork, and yes, they are part of, you've done all the research and everything, and yes, they are part of the family, but you may still be continuing to research them. So there's those tags that you can use in Ancestry, and just keep the notes. There's notes that you can do in a lot of genealogy programs where you can just type in information as you go, and you can date it as you go. So you've got a running log there of things that you've tried and everything else. And then there's a Google app called Goldie May, and when you're in, like, you start an Ancestry and you turn it on, you can actually set up projects, put what your question is, and then whenever you click and go to other sites, it's automatically logging the websites that you go to. And then there's a way that you can tag information in there that this is information that helps verify the question or helps answer the question and things like that. And then so where are we up to? Number 1, include all the resources. Number 2, if you've got no resources, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you're not wrong. Just put in the source information that you have yet to verify this person. You currently cannot locate any records pertaining to this person. Number 3 is, are the lost relatives really lost? Are there relatives in there that you didn't know about that you may be able to find through other searches that shows that there was a child that died during birth or died in infancy or in childhood? It could be they turn around and even on something like, which census was it? It's either 1900 or 1910 US Census. It asks the women how many, those of age, how many children have you given birth to, and how many are still exist, and how many are still alive. And so that's another way that you can find it too. I think it's pretty sure it's 1910. It's either 1900 or 1910 for the US federal one where they ask that question. And as far as I recall, it's the only one that it's asked on. And I'm like, man, I wish they would ask that like on all of them, because then you can look at it and go, oh, she actually had 9 births, but she's only got 7 children surviving. Now we've got to go find the other 2. So they become lost relatives that you've got to go find. Things like that. And then go back to the previous census. How many children did they have listed there? Because that might tell you if a child died in the last 10 years. So there's that way that you can look as well. Misinterpretations. The misinterpretations are when you come across vocab and within the genealogical world, and it's a term that you encounter while you're searching, and you're not completely certain that you understand it. So it could be a word that is written in a parish record. You go, what the heck is that word? Go look it up. And it could, because you could mean, oh yeah, that just means blah, 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 blah. But does it actually really mean that? Because there are a lot of words that we use today that had very different meanings, even 10, 15, 20 years ago. Can you imagine what some of those words, and then there's some words that we don't use anymore today that have been phased out over time. And then there's words that, we used it it meant a certain thing up to, like, say, the 1960s. Then from then on, it meant something else. So are you actually using the correct understanding of some words? And then number 5 is, write up about your lost relatives. If you've got a relative that's lost, write it up, and then maybe talk to a researcher, a genealogy group. There's message boards around. There's Facebook groups if you belong. Some of the Facebook groups I belong to, they turn around and they've got like an image of the census report and say, look, I can only find information on these four members of this family. The 5th one, I have no clue. This is the only place I can find them mentioned. And you can look up things like, did the family have a religious affiliation? What was their occupation? Because remember, a lot of in the 1800s, a lot of the occupations went from father to child. It followed down, or even mother to daughter, followed down. So that's why it confused me when I discovered that my 4th great grandfather was actually a jeweler, but his son became a bookbinder. I'm like, wait, what? And it wasn't until years later that we found out that something happened to my 4th great grandfather, which we're now searching on. And the 3rd great grandfather had a stepfather who was a bookbinder, and that's when the bookbinding business came into the family. So a lot of times the trades were passed from father to son. So maybe it could be in their occupation. There could be a organization for that particular occupation. But look at different places that you could look for information, like the genealogical groups. There's groups that you've got genealogy groups that will maybe by surname, by last name, with the variance of spelling. There could be genealogical groups that are based in a particular area. If a family's settled in that area for a long time, they may have records of that family being in the area. Of land deeds as well is another good place to look. Local newspapers, local books, books in the local libraries of local families. Libraries have really cool genealogy books, and they're books that have been written about families that lived in the area and what they did and who they were. And some of them will be actual books. I've got one for one part of my family, and like the first 100 pages or something is all to do with ancestors that came into the family. And then all of a sudden I'm finding is he my great grandfather, or is he one of my great granduncles? There's a George Eakins in there. If you're watching me, you know that George, James, John, William, and Thomas. Yes. It's like looking for John Smith when I come to look for one of those 5 names. I come across it, and I know that somewhere in my tree I have screwed up the Georges and the Thomases somewhere along the line. So I've got to go back and find that and clear it up. But, have you shared your write-up of your lost person with researchers, with a genealogy society, with message boards, even Facebook groups? There's some really cool genealogy Facebook groups out there where people will come in and they'll put a picture and say, can anybody tell me when around the time this picture was taken? And there are people who can look at the fashion, the hairstyles, how the photograph is staged, so how they're positioned and posed and stuff, and give you a pretty accurate date on when that photo was taken. Just by looking at the fashion and the hairstyles and how they are posed in the pictures. Which is kind of really cool when you think about it. So they got a lot of knowledge about fashion then. Or it could be somebody puts a census in and goes, look, I've looked everywhere for this person. This is my great grandfather's daughter, my great aunt. I don't know where she is. I've looked everywhere for her. And they may come up with some other ideas of places that you could go and look as well. So that's another way. So your 5 tips. I have waffled tonight. Your 5 tips for brick walls are: include all the sources of the information, because when you include the sources, it may trigger an idea to go look somewhere else. If you have no source, put there that you don't have a source. Doesn't mean the information is wrong, just means you don't know where it came from, and you're still looking, you're actively looking. If you've got a lost relative, are they really lost? Have you done the research to find this lost relative, or have you just heard the rumor that there's a lost relative in there? That's always another good one too, is the rumors. Number 4, misinterpretations of terminology on documents from years ago. It may be a word that we still use today, but back then it had a completely different meaning. So that may also, when you're looking at things like that, that could also be a clue to you that maybe you should go and look at that word and see what it meant back in 1850, because it could have a completely different meaning today. And then that finding the correct definition now sheds new light on the documentation that you found. And it's like, oh, okay. So you could have one of those aha moments. And then check out genealogical groups, societies, Facebook groups, message boards. Look for, is anybody doing a one-name study on that particular name? There's another way. Google the name. That's another one. Google the name. For historical purposes. What happens when you Google a name? What comes up? There's all sorts of and there's all sorts of things you may find. So that's it from me for today. Hope you enjoyed those 5 tips. Hope they help you with your genealogical brick walls. Let us know, if you want to connect with us. The link is in the description down below. Just click on that. You'll get 100 interview questions for family members. They always make great game thingies when you get the family together too. And then once you've got that, it'll take you to my calendar. But anyway, go have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening around 6 p.m. Pacific time. Hei konera.